Welcome to Defenders of Craft, a Craft Pride podcast, bringing you the heart and soul of beer culture in Austin and around Texas. All right, so we're live at the Texas Craft Brewers Festival, starting our second panel of the day. My guest today is Josh Hare from Hops and Grain Brewery. How you doing today, Josh?
Hey, Josh Hare, hi in the comments.
Hey, doing good. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Everybody loves you because you're a cool dude, and we think that you make great beers. You do good stuff for our community. What's not to like? Also, we got my co-host for the day, Nick De La Rosa here.
What up?
At Hashtagger. We have Josh Stewart from Interbrews.
Hey, everybody.
And Catherine Contreras from She's Crafty Podcast.
Right.
All right, folks. Well, let's go ahead and just jump right into it. How you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day for a festival. I think that rain really helped kind of cool everything off.
Absolutely.
It's been,
Barometric pressures are in the right place. We're
Oh,
in the
yeah.
80s. It's
It's been real
September.
nice.
Hey, Josh. So, hey, thanks for being here. And number one fanboy here checking in. Man, how have you been? Hadn't seen you in a minute.
I've been good, man. I've been, just living. LIVIN.
Nice.
Kicking through, doing some stuff down in San Marcos.
How's that going along for you?
It's going. Yeah, it's going.
Awesome,
Slowly
man. We're looking
but
forward to
surely.
seeing that. Give me a reason to go back down to San Marcos. Hadn't been there in a minute. I used to just go for the river. Now I'm going for river beer. So there's that.
Nice. Cool.
So, one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on is that sustainability is kind of your soapbox. And I think it's something that's kind of missing in our industry. I think we can be a little wasteful sometimes. And you guys are not about that. You guys are about, using the whole animal, if you will. And I'd love to just kind of pick your brain about that and see what are some of the most successful ways that you've found to incorporate sustainability in your business model and how that's gone for you.
Yeah, so good question, and definitely one that we continue to evolve, as the years progress as a brewery. But early on in the thought process through just kind of putting together what I wanted our business model to be, that was always, to me at least, kind of a no-brainer, right? You're going into an industry that is incredibly resource intensive, from water to utilities to raw materials to, all of those things. And, in any industry, we all have waste streams. And, the biggest thing I think that's going to not only give you an incredible narrative to talk about with your staff and your customers, but also, provide some sustainability for your entire industry is looking at all of our inputs, what happens to them downstream, and then are there ways that we can not only save money on, mitigating that waste, but then, possibly turning them into a positive piece of your storytelling. So that was, I think, early on, building it into your culture is incredibly important. It's always hard as a business to try to add a new piece to your personality midstream and convince all of your team that this is what we believe in. So that was the first thing, is just making it part of the storyline from day one. And then bringing in people that gave a shit about that. Honestly, it's hard to develop a team that is going to be sustainability or environmentally, stewardship minded if they're not also on board.
Right.
And so, finding the right crew for that has also been critical as we've grown.
From what I understand, it actually pays better to ride your bike to Hops and Grain if you work there.
It does. Yes, absolutely.
You get a little pay incentive if you ride your bike. That's something I've never heard anyone else do. And that's really, I feel like, taking that value all the way down to even the most basic concept. And that's just so awesome to hear that, we're in a city where commuting by bicycle is very realistic, very plausible, and very popular. And so that's cool that you're doing your part to keep your employees on board with it. How many folks would you say, on average, bike in?
We definitely, luckily, a lot of our staff lives within, even walking distance of the brewery. So, that helps a lot, I think, with the number of folks that are participating in that. But, the bigger piece of it for me is just, it's nice to be thinking about the environment, right? We all, hopefully, in our day-to-day are at least thinking about what we're wasting and where we could possibly save more. But it's a whole other thing as a business to be able to provide an environment and a culture that actually, incentivizes you beyond just, it being, you're getting some green credits from, from Mother Nature. It's nice to actually add a reason to not only, add some kind of fun competition amongst the staff to see who does that the most, who rides their bike the most or walks or takes public transportation, but then also backing up the fact that we realize that, we all have to be better at what we're doing day to day, and we're also all working, and we got to pay the bills, and we have to keep the lights on. And so if I'm asking you to do something that's a little outside of your comfort zone, it's only realistic that I would provide something on the back end of that to compensate or incentivize you to be a better steward of the environment and to the community. We have enough cars in Austin. Getting one more off
Fair
the road
enough.
is never a bad thing.
What y'all do, it does impact lives. Like I haven't told you personally. I've told Jody at Witchcraft, but I'm one of those cretins who honestly I recycle now because you lead that. Like you do that. That's what you do. That's something that Hops and Grain, the sustainability that they do, and watching Jody recycle all the time. I've told him thank you. Y'all have turned me on to that. You can just admit it live. Like I didn't recycle. I was one of those people. I do now because I get what y'all are doing and what y'all say.
That's
and
super awesome. Like, how does that make you feel to know that you're an inspiration to people to kind of change the way they're treating the world and the environment?
No, it's awesome. We've known each other for so long, Nick and I, and love seeing everything that both of us have grown through this industry for. And so, in any impact that we can make that impacts positively things way beyond just us as a company that's why I think most of us should be trying to start a business to build something that influences people in the right way. That's rad. Thank you for sharing that, man.
So, you kind of mentioned San Marcos a little bit earlier. Do you have an update for everybody, like how far you guys are along and what your plans are for that brewery in general?
Definitely. So, San Marcos has been a work in progress for, goodness, almost 2 years. When we realized that we were kind of outgrowing our space in Austin and didn't know what the next step should be or would be or could be, we started very quickly looking at places outside of the city limits of Austin. Just anyone who's built anything here or tried to remodel your house or anything like that, Austin is one of those bad words on the list of things you want to do when you want to go through construction. So that was a given that we were going to do it outside of Austin. And for us, cultural relevance is huge as a company. It's hard to bring people into your team and be able to get them on board with what we stand for if you don't have some backbone to your own culture. Where at times you have to stand up for what you believe in, even if it's not maybe the easiest or most popular thing. And so we started looking at communities that I felt like our brand was relevant and our culture was relevant, and we could do something good for the community in the way that we've chosen to exercise our sustainability mission. And so, almost half of our staff went to school in San Marcos. Quite a few live there, and it just kept coming back as like a really, really rad city. It's centered on a river, which we're very outdoor focused, but rivers have always kind of been the lifeblood of my own creative thought process, especially building out the brewery and coming up with all those concepts. Water has always been such a powerful mentor, I guess you could say, for me. If we could all be like water, I think we'd all live in a much better place. And so, finding a really cool city that had that culture, that was laid back, that was committed to, local products, very similar to Austin, but also was looking to help businesses that are trying to open up in the city rather than hinder them by burdensome regulation and red tape. So we met with the city of San Marcos and kind of pitched the idea, and it was overwhelmingly welcoming.
That's awesome.
Permitting has been a total breeze. The bigger delays for us are just, we've chosen again in San Marcos to go into a multi-tenant space. So we're not the only tenant in that building. And because of the way we're situated in the building, we're at the mercy of every other tenant in the building for us to proceed with a lot of our construction. So we've had some delays over the summer, a few months behind, but we are now, I can comfortably say we are on track to be open, shipping beer, pouring beer in the tasting room in January. All of our equipment is here.
Yeah! Which is more hops and grain, folks. That's what we love to hear.
That's coming soon for sure.
So San Marcos is going to operate as like a facility that'll produce more of your mainstream core beers, and then what's going to happen to the tap room on the east side?
Yeah, great question, and exciting stuff that we're working through right now. So we're going to be moving all of our packaging, so all the beers that we do in cans and our year-round core brands are all going to be produced out of San Marcos. We have a much bigger space down there. It's a lot more efficiently built out for distribution, where our Austin facility is is really close to the city center and it's walkable and easy to access, but it's terrible for bringing 18-wheelers in and out multiple times a day. It really disrupts the parking lot and our neighbors and just about everyone there. So we're moving some of those efficiencies down to San Marcos, and then Austin is where we'll be able to start. One, we're going to scale production in Austin back. So we're doing brewing about 10,000 barrels a year right now is kind of the pace we're on, and we'll scale that probably in half, and then move about 15 to 20,000 barrels of capacity down to San Marcos when we open. So we'll be in a place where we're not cramped for space, which we've never been in before. So it'll give us a little more freedom to, we started rolling out a few products in really small runs, a couple hundred cases at a time. And rather than printing the cans, we're doing some labeled cans. So our dispensary series, got a new pellets and powder that'll be rolling out that's been draft only. And so this is kind of the beginning of what Austin is going to give us the flexibility to do, is to really, our brewery has always found, I think, we found our stride in lagers and hop-forward beers. Both our drinking stride and our brewing stride is kind of where I think our tendencies lie, are those two areas. And so this will really enable us to expand that out, play around with some more lagers that we haven't had tank space for, and then some new hoppy beers that, as the raw material side progresses with new hop products and new available varieties through breeding programs, we're really looking forward to committing a lot more resources to that and getting more fun, fresh beer out into the market.
Can you actually tell the folks a little bit about your pellets and powder? Because I'm a real big fan of that beer, and I like that style of brewing beer. I think that it adds so much to a beer to add that powder to it. And I'd love for you to tell everyone else in a far more technical sense what that means. And because I think that's still so new, not a lot of folks understand what pellets and powder would really mean.
Right. Yeah. No. It's a great question, and sometimes it's funny. Sometimes as brewers, you get trapped into your own mindset of you're so deeply involved in making this product, and then you name it something that makes no sense to anyone else that's not deeply involved in the product. So this has been a fun process. This pellets and powder beer. It originated back last year, right after the hop harvest. Yakima Chief Hop Union started producing a new product, which is basically, they take whole flower hops that have been dried, kilned, and then when they would normally be passing them through for pelletizing, they've got a patented, now at least, cryogenic process to separate the lupulin glands, which are going to contain all the oils that produce flavor, aroma, texture, a lot of the components that most of us as brewers are looking for, but separating all of that from the green matter. So there's a lot of downstream impacts of high levels of polyphenol content, and all that comes from that vegetative matter, as well as some characteristics in a lot of hop varieties that are very vegetal, and a lot of that ties back to that. So the concept that YCH was going through was to try to create this intense product that enables brewers to get more of the impact of that hop variety into the beer while also improving processing efficiency. So that green matter and polyphenol content is where a lot of beer gets absorbed during dry hopping. And so, after dry hopping, when you're ready to, finish conditioning and you're going to move beer into a packaging tank, you're dumping a lot of stuff off of the bottom of that tank in the form of, most of it, green matter that's been absorbing liquid. And so your yields go down, obviously, as your dry hopping rates go up. So this lupulin product has been something that, they were early on pitching as a way for you to increase yields, but also increase intensity. But it's the same stuff. Lupulin is in pellets. It's also in the lupulin powder. But the characteristics that you get, at least for me, are much more reminiscent of what you experience when you're actually out at hop harvest on a farm and you're walking into a baling room or a drying room, and it's just this overwhelmingly intense hop aroma that, to date, I've never found a way to actually get that into a beer. That freshness, wet hops don't do it. Nothing that we've really exercised has really contributed that kind of cool, fresh flavor and aroma, while also being shelf stable and process efficient. So this, they call it Lupulin 2 is kind of the word that they're using for that product, and they do a powder and then also pelletized powder. So the powder it's really cool, but because it doesn't absorb any liquid, just traditional dry hopping where you just dump it in the top of a fermenter, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't absorb anything. So 2 days later, you can open the top of the fermenter and there's just a big cloud and pillow of all that lupulin powder that's never made it into the liquid, into suspension. So the pellets help a little bit with that processing side. But it's also, we've found it to be not necessarily the most desirable all by itself. So still bringing in some of the cool vegetal components that you get out of a traditional, T90 hop pellet, and also obviously all the oil aromatics and flavor. But we found a really cool balance between those two that creates an oiliness and a mouthfeel intensity that you wouldn't otherwise find. But at the same time, we can process it and get good utilization from it. And create flavors that we haven't been able to do previously just from the pellets.
So you use both the powder and the traditional pellets.
Correct.
What's the ratio?
It kind of varies. The pellets and powder, it follows a lot of the same theme that our Greenhouse IPA series follows, where every batch is a new focal hop at least. With Greenhouse, sometimes it's a single hop variety, sometimes we do blends. Whereas pellets and powder we're constantly evolving the flavors. Is more, right now there's not very many varieties you can get in lupulin powder form.
I was gonna say, is there certain varieties that lend themselves better to it, or?
Well, and to date, it's just been, this is like a brand new product, not even a year and a half or two old, and so every harvest year, new varieties are put into this lupulin powder form.
Okay.
So it's the breadth of flavor and aroma you can get out of the lupulin powder. Was limited to like 4 varieties in 2016, and we're now going to have probably 10 to 12.
Okay.
So this pellets and powder IPA will be a continuing evolution of, as more and more new breeding varieties are available and more varieties are put into that lupulin product.
And you just use it in the dry hopping stage, or can you use
No,
it?
we're doing some. We're like a day into fermentation, utilizing the powder. We're doing some stuff mid-fermentation.
Okay.
So we're playing around with not only the varieties, but also when we're introducing it into the process.
Okay.
And then how we process it when we do introduce
Yeah.
it. So it's been a fun. It's an educational process for all of us at the brewery for sure, and we hope we're able to translate some of that process to everyone that's drinking it.
Are you guys pioneers in this? Are there other breweries that we would know of?
Oh
that are
no,
awesome?
no. We're definitely not in any way pioneer. We were with one of the first breweries in Texas that got to test these out back in right after the harvest last year. I mean, I'd probably say here locally, Joe Moorfeld over at Pine House has played around with it the most.
Okay.
They have such an incredible facility for putting out a lot of fun stuff all the time and rotating different beers and varieties and yeast strains. And so Joe and I have had a lot of fun just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and then learning from each other's, successes and failures. But now, I mean, there's quite a few, I think, now, or now that this is becoming more and more available, a lot of breweries are introducing it into
How does
their
the
process.
cost compare, like pound per pound?
So I mean, it's a little over twice as much per pound, but the dosage rate is about half.
Okay.
So it kind of comes out in the wash.
Yeah.
But we've always taken the approach of cost when it comes to hops is never anything that we worry about.
Yeah.
We're incredibly inefficient in that capacity, but there's other places to save money, and hops for us is not one of those.
Well, you're
Yeah.
efficient in all those other places. So
Sure, hopefully it balances out, right? Yeah.
Well, it's one of the two things that are in your name. You would think that it would be more than apparent in every beer you make.
I love that what y'all do out over there, man. Y'all experiment, y'all bring out tons of new beers that are awesome, and hell, y'all use hops that don't even have names yet. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I'll take some of this. I don't know. I'm HB 134. I don't know. Just some stuff, man. You're like, oh crap, they're messing with stuff with just numbers in the name. They haven't even named it yet. To me, that's exciting, man. That's awesome to me. Because I love the exploration that y'all do and your brewers and everybody out there finding new ways to do fun stuff. Like, I mean, it's beer at the end of the day, but I mean, it's more than beer. So it's fun watching y'all go from serving beer and what's the yeast lab now. When it was just a tiny little room, and now opening up a place in San Marcos, continuously making excellent beer, trying hops that may or may not be real, and just continuously contributing to our community, not just our community, the community of like humanity at large, which is amazing. It's inspiring, and another thing I wanted to compliment y'all on is the new packaging for the beers it's pretty damn sexy.
Oh,
I mean,
thanks.
y'all have always had really great brand visibility, and but I mean, what's inside of the cans is even better than like looking at what y'all are doing with the packaging and what y'all are doing with beer. It's just awesome, man. I'm so happy for y'all.
Shout out to whoever made that new Hayes County label. That beer, one, is fantastic. Two, the label art is pretty on point. I really like it.
Well, thanks, man. I definitely, I mean, a huge tip of the hat to Darrett DeRuin and DeRuin and Company, who they've done all of our branding since day one. They continue to just blow me out of the water every time I see new stuff, and a lot of it. I appreciate you saying that, Nick. So much of what I believe in, at least in the way we run our business, is understanding our place in the supply chain. We make a product out of raw materials that are harvested for the most part once a year. There is some variation in that, but what's so important to me about beer is that, we're not the only thing that's cool about beer, and we shouldn't try to be the only thing that's cool about beer as a brewery, right? Like, we rely on maltsters, we rely on barley growers, wheat growers, we rely on hop farmers, and without, taking the responsibility of, we're using something that people are growing, ultimately for our industry, very specifically for our industry. And every step of the way we handle it and store it and introduce it into our beers, market it, talk about it, brand it, and then serve it to our customers, we should all be under the mindset of, we are just a step in the value chain of all of that. We need to be adding value at every single step of the process. So you can make a beautiful beer and then put it in shitty packaging, and that to me is just a total slap in the face to everyone that grew and harvested and processed the materials that you put into that beer, and then your staff that helped brew it and package it and cellar it and transfer it. And so not bringing in, a talented, motivated graphic designer is such a, you've wasted so many things. Like, that's the last step before somebody decides they're going to buy it. And obviously it's your responsibility to put something in that package that people want to come back to. But what grabs them off the shelf is generally going to be packaging or advertising.
Man, that is so on point. Like, hell, I listened to some of the bands I listened to as a young kid, because the album cover was awesome.
Right?
Like Venom. Oh
yeah.
shoot. Like, shit, man.
What was that
That's all
Aerosmith album with the nipples on the... somebody's got to know what that...
Probably
That's my
Joey.
Facebook cover.
I totally bought that album just because of that.
Yeah, man. But so I see people come out and they'll say, "Hey, we're looking for beers with an armadillo on the packaging." Like, seriously? Okay, this is Texas. I'm sure we have a beer with an armadillo on it. But people, that is a purchasing thing that
Yeah.
people do. That goes in their head. That's one of the variables that you have to conquer when looking at a wall of beer, and having something that distinguishes you. And the packaging y'all have has changed. It's evolved. So it still is hops and grain, but it's evolved. I mean, I still see it in there, and that's awesome to hear. That's probably because y'all are still using the same people y'all went with, and so they have y'all's mindset dialed in, and they've delivered it great. And the beer inside's beautiful, man. As soon as y'all's 3 beers dropped, the dispensary IPA, Pale Ale, and Haze, like, I had to get, like, well, hell, I'm getting the 6-packs of each, obviously. And then I just sat there and I was like, God damn it, these damn cans match the beer. Like, it's just, man, y'all just kill it continuously, man. And
I think, though, also what you guys have going for you is that the packaging is beautiful, but the beer is delicious too. And you don't need anything gimmicky or kitschy, because the beer really speaks for itself, in my opinion. But your packaging is unbelievable.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I really, again, the DeRuin and Company crew, like, what I've loved about working with them so much is every time we design a new product, it involves about 10 to 12 hours of just meeting with me and drinking beers and just talking and listening to what we're thinking, where our mindset is, how we're evolving as a company, what the inspiration was for the beer that we created, where the name came from. And then they're just, in my opinion, some of the best at translating that into visual, graphics that communicate who we are as a company. And the reason, I think, why some of our branding is slowly shifting while still maintaining that same personality is because we continue to add more people to our staff that bring really cool points of view, really cool perspectives into, our company narrative. And so as we continue through those conversations of introducing new products to our graphic designers, our conversational, interests they're not totally different than they were 6, 12, 18 months ago. They're just adding layers onto the storyline that, that we continue to try to tell. So it's been cool to see how they've evolved all of that new artwork. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm a liquid designer. So that piece I can talk a lot about, but I have no idea how to translate words into a visual package like that, and I think they've done an incredible job. So I definitely appreciate that feedback. And if we put shitty beer in that, I mean, I don't think I could look them in the eyes, right?
Correct. Hey, so another thing, man, that you said a little bit earlier, doing some lagers. This is Austin. It's 100 degrees here a lot of times. We have great water and limestone here that helps contribute to wonderful minerality. Some of the best lagers I've ever had are right here in Austin. Your Zoe, I mean, God bless. I had that for breakfast.
Awesome. Me too.
Hell yeah. What other lagers can we be looking forward to, man? Because I hear lager, and man, I love pilsners. I love Helles. I didn't even know I like Kolsch's, but thank you. I guess what I do. Yeah, man. What else can we see coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, no. So it's funny. I got to say this for our director of operations, Bob Langner. We launched a beer called River Beer not long ago. It's a premium American lager, some flaked maize, Pilsner malt, just really, really nice, clean, as the name suggests. River drinking beer. But we keep talking about doing a river ice.
Oh shit!
So that, we'll see if we can somehow. That ice distillation is not currently legal in Texas, so we have to work our way through that. But that may be, the most.
An 8% river beer.
Yeah, I mean, why the hell not, right? Everyone needs an ice beer. No, but I've definitely got some interest. As soon as we can get the San Marcos Brewery open and free up some capacity in Austin, I really would like to start working on the Vienna lager. That style of beer is something that I love, always have loved. It's for most Texans, ambers seem to still be fairly popular, which I still can't really wrap my head around, but ambers are holding on there strong. And what makes an amber even better to me is to make it a lager. So I'd like to play around with Vienna lager. And I'd also love to do a dry hop version of river beer because
hell yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds fantastic.
We like to throw hops into just about everything, and river beer is. The hop additions are almost embarrassing, and it's just enough to be able to say that you work at a brewery. But yeah, it'd be fun to make a really nice, heavy-handed, dry-hopped river beer.
Man, those words in that order, dry-hopped river beer.
Yes.
Holy shit, my liver's got a hard on.
So, what do you think that you guys have done that has helped to send your sustainability message to the consumers? Because it's one thing, to preach to your employees, to people who are already associated with you, but how can you affect the community to preach that message as well as the fact that you're making great beers?
It's a great question, and I think first and foremost it comes back to the way that we tell our story as a company. The storyline for any brand is what influences both other people in the industry or your customers, right? So we have to make sure that the way that we tell our story and the content of that story is relevant to our company, but then also something that people can digest and understand. So that's been a huge piece. We have an incredible sales and marketing department that, definitely gets our message out way better than, any one of us individually could. And so that's definitely a yes. Yeah, tip of the hat to Sheila for sure on that. Making that story, loud and proud, because I think the biggest thing that most of us as brewers run into, and we operate, when most of us started up, it was very do-it-yourself, very bootstrap, and you find yourself being very reactive, right? So you don't know you have a problem until you have the problem, and then you try to fix it, and that's not something that many of us want to tell about. We don't like to tell stories about how things got totally fucked up and what we did to fix them. But for us, we've tried to make our narrative and storyline a lot more proactive, so we're looking at places in the brewery where we could be saving money rather than waiting until we run into some huge issue with processing waste or utility costs or otherwise. And I think developing that into your storyline is hopefully impactful to other businesses and also customers, because we want our customers to know what we're doing too, because yes, it's great for the environment, and yes, it's good for us as a company and for our culture, but it's also something that gets more people attracted to our brand, and it's real and it's relevant, and we're not bullshitting about this stuff. So being able to show people what we do and explain it in a very tangible way that's the biggest, I think, the biggest struggle that brands have with telling that story, because you're not saving money by trying to be a better environmental steward. It generally costs you more money. But where you can find that advantageous is by telling that story to a bigger and broader audience and influencing people to, one, be better themselves, but then also support your efforts by being a paying customer. And that I think that I in no way will say that was the plan from day one, but I think we found ourselves, because of our great team, really being able to spread that message in a really good way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you already changed Nick's life, so who's next, really? So, what is it that you think that other brewers in town can do? Obviously, you are an influential part of the guild, so you have a lot of weight in our community. What is it that we can do as a community as a whole to really put that message out there and kind of raise the awareness to it?
Yeah, I think definitely. I'm glad you touched on that. And for any breweries out there listening that are not members of the Texas Craft Brewers Guild, which there's not a whole lot. We have a really great percentage of all the licensed breweries, but that's the first step, I think. Being able to bounce ideas off of other folks in the industry is one of the most valuable pieces, I think, that the guild gives to brewers. Is you have a network of over 200 breweries with a lot of experience in all of those ranks, and you can post a question onto a forum and have that many eyes looking at it and that many different pieces of feedback coming back. But at the end of the day, we all have to be thinking about how to be better stewards of the environment and more sustainable as businesses, because beyond the environment, sustainability should be cooked into your entire business ethos, or you're not going to, just by definition, you're not going to be around very long, right? You have to, financially, you have to be sustainable, all those pieces. And so I think, shifting your mindset again to not waiting for something to fuck up and then figure out how to fix it, but actually thinking proactively about how can we get in front of what would otherwise eventually become an issue for us, and engaging staff. I think the worst mistake that many business owners make is not looking to their staff for not only inspiration but for guidance, because operating in a vacuum is the worst thing anybody can do. And there's a reason why people want to work in beer, and it's because they want to change the world, just like all of us. One beer at a time.
Vineyards can sell bottles of wine.
You want to give them your
out of their store. How come Dripping Springs Distillery would sell bottles out of their facility?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I'll state what you just asked. So, very astute observation you made that yes, wineries are able to sell bottles to go to any customer that comes into a winery. Distilleries can sell bottles to go to customers that come into their distillery, but breweries cannot. And it's a pretty short amount of research that you need to go through in exploring who distributes each of those three products. And beer wholesalers do not distribute wine or spirits. The way permits are structured, that's not something that's allowed. And so, the wine industry was really able to leverage a lot of the tourism draw for, Texas-grown grapes and, wineries that grow their own grapes. And that's always been a big draw, to Texas, is the agriculture in Texas. And so early on, wineries were able to advance legislation that added all those rights for them. And then distillers, again, they don't have the opposition when they're trying to push legislation through that breweries currently have. The lobby that represents the wholesalers give on average, like $3.5 million every legislative session to campaign contributions. And that vehicle's pretty powerful in most state legislatures, but especially in Texas. So, the answer to that question, the long and short answer of that is we have opposition at the legislative level from our wholesaler groups that don't want us to sell beer to go, and they're lobbyists. But yeah, that doesn't exist in spirits and wine. So yeah, it makes Texas even more confusing to navigate. Yes, thanks for the question. Yeah.
So talking about legislation, what's the guild working on for the next session to try to make some progress and kind of take some of that ground back? Because you're right, it's a constant struggle between us and distributors and them wanting to profit off of our labors. So what's the guild working on next?
Yeah, that's a good question. We definitely we have some things that we kind of hold close and don't really talk about just for strategic purposes. But I also just want to throw in too that we talk a lot about wholesalers, right? And there are incredible wholesaler partners that we work with that really want to grow our brand, and they want to see us succeed, because us succeeding means them succeeding. And so I don't want to paint the picture that, all wholesalers are bad. There's some really good ones out there, and there's some that really want to see Texas beer grow. But there are some that are, and not to say that I don't fault them, but I understand their position in, they're multi-generational businesses that have been doing the same thing over and over, and it's worked really well. It's created, great wealth for their families. And so they're trying to protect those interests, and I get that. They don't want anything to change in the way that breweries are able to sell their products to the end consumer, because there's a concern that would somehow cut them out of, of what they're currently serving, their role in the three-tier system. My frustration, at least, comes with this archaic view that the sanctity of the three-tier system as it existed right after Prohibition is something that we should still be fighting to maintain right now, because it's archaic. I mean, up until 4 years ago, it wasn't legal to tweet about where your beer was sold, because on the TABC, books in the code, it didn't reference social media as an allowed advertising vehicle. And it's not that the TABC makes these rules up. They follow what the legislature tells them to do, and the legislature is influenced very heavily by special interests and the lobbying groups that are representing the businesses that have the most money to contribute to who gets elected. And so that's a lot of where the corruptness, in my opinion, of what's happening in Texas comes from. But us as a guild, our primary focus has always been around educating not only the public on what is great about Texas craft beer, but providing incredible resources to our members to continue to make better beer, to grow quality, grow technical expertise, grow our safety measures, and even legislatively. We fight very hard to maintain the rights that we have. First and foremost, we don't want to lose any more rights. It's been a trend in Texas over the past 10 years, or really, since Prohibition, that giving breweries more rights has never been, a thing that happens. And so, from that, we stand to lose just as much as we stand to gain in any legislative session, because we don't know what the other side of the lobbying, opposition is going to try to take away to give themselves more, more control over that three-tier system. And so, that's a big piece of it. We've also had, if you haven't followed any of the Texas Tribune reporting leading into the legislative session, there's been quite a changeover in the power and organizational structure down at the TABC. So there's a new executive director. There's all kinds of new positions at the executive levels that are shifting over, and so we're taking a lot of our resources to really make sure that we're getting in front of all these new positions, to make sure that they know who we are, what we're fighting for, because we provide the best feedback to the TABC as a regulatory agency, being the ones that they regulate. That's the feedback that they want, and because of the previous group of leadership there, that wasn't a one-directional or one-way. It was only a one-way conversation. It was us asking for things and then just saying no. And so it seems like at least this new guard of leadership is much more interested in creating a better environment from a regulatory standpoint for breweries in Texas. So we're going to continue to be very involved in those conversations and continue to meet with all the wholesaler lobbying groups, because that we have to maintain that dialogue, not only to understand what their frustrations are, but also to make sure that we're all trying to move in a direction that's positive for all of us. Because sure. I think us being able to make more beer only benefits our wholesaler partners, and our wholesaler partners having easier ways to run their business only benefits us. So there's gain to be made from all of us working together. But we're also walking into the session where TABC comes under sunset review in 2019. So basically, to put it very simply, that is when the legislature analyzes whether or not the way the TABC is operating is the best for their constituents and for the state as a whole. And so we hope to and plan to be a very, very involved voice in that process of if I had it my way, we would just scrap the entire alcoholic beverage code and rewrite it from scratch with all stakeholders involved, rather than what happened the first time that went in place, after Prohibition. We've got a lot of great voices as brewers, and I think getting everyone to one table and talking about that's the most productive way for the TABC to regulate us as an industry. So we're not pushing that agenda as a guild. That's just the Josh Hare agenda. That who knows how far that'll go. But But we are very very already active. Coming off of a legislative session, and in Texas, for those that don't know, we meet every other year. So you've got 2 years in between each session to try to get work done, and we're trying to start that work 2 months ago rather than waiting till the last minute.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And so one thing that I wanted to bring up is that this event, where we're at, is a fundraiser for the guild. And so everyone who's here is helping to participate in protecting those laws and protecting our community. And so we just want to say thank you to everybody who came out to the Texas Craft Brewers Festival today and participated and makes donations, because it's not the only way. You can just make a donation on the website if you'd like.
Right.
How do you do that, Josh?
Well, you go to TexasCraftBrewersGuild.com. We've got a lot of resources there, a lot of information about all of our member breweries. Our social media feeds are very active. And we talk a lot about what we're doing, and we celebrate a lot of our what our brewery members are doing, because that's what makes Texas great, is all the breweries that that have been here for a number of years, like St. Arnold, Real Ale, Live Oak, who've really been carrying the torch when it wasn't easy to sell beer, in Texas. And those of us that have opened in the past 5-6 years, we've got it easy as far as I'm concerned, because they've paved the way for that. So continuing to tell that story and show praise for all the hard work that all of not only our brewery members are doing, but all of you as customers, getting out and supporting us and putting your money into other local businesses. That's the lifeblood of this whole thing. And yeah, the Texas Craft Brewers Festival, and of course I'm biased, but it's the best festival to attend in the state. It takes care of the brewers the best, it takes care of the customers the best, and it truly is a representation of what we want to see going forward, the craft beer environment in Texas. It should feel like this festival every day, right?
Yeah. With the exception of the shotgun rule, I heard about this in the Brewers bracket.
we are on a public space. It's a city-owned property. We have to draw a line somewhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just messing.
And we got our big Halloween party coming up. You got to throw in a
nice.
throw in a plug for that.
If you've never been to Hops and Grain Halloween party, oh my God!
Is there a theme for that?
Well, so the theme is, for me at least, I've never seen this concentration of costumes in one place. Like, I bet last year of the, 500 people that came through, maybe 4 did not wear a costume.
Okay.
So that's really what we pride ourselves on.
Did you make them leave?
Well, no, but you pretty much, you walk in, and if you don't have a costume on, you
like
want
a
to
real
leave.
asshole?
Because, like, everyone in there not only has a costume on, but they actually spent some time and energy putting it together. So that's what I'm proudest about with our Halloween party, is it's an incredible costume competition that we do at the end of it. We'll have a lot of beers pouring, blocking off the whole parking lot this year, which we haven't done in the past. So
dance party,
of course. Wouldn't be a Halloween party.
It's probably one of my favorite beer events of the year. I really love it. And Halloween's always been a huge, big part for me, because it's really your chance to kind of let loose, because you're wearing a costume. People may not recognize you.
Exactly.
It's always a good time. Well, thank you so much for coming out and spending some time with us in our mobile lounge today. And thank you for making excellent beers and being consistent. That's one of the things that I feel like some breweries kind of lack, is that consistency. Is like every time I've ever picked up a Zoe, it tastes like a Zoe. And thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, and thank you for having me out here. This has been a blast.
Yep. Well, that's the end of our panel for today. We'll be back at 4 with Jeff Willis and Joe Moorfield.
Oh, you'll want to tune in for that.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun
Joe's
one.
entertaining.
I'm sure we'll talk more about lupulin powder.
Absolutely.
Lots of it. They're bringing something special for us to try.
Nice.
Shout out Bob Galligan.